Hey friends, hope you guys are doing well. It's Monday morning and I'm trying to get my rear in gear and get moving this morning. So I thought I would jump on and do another tutorial for a new stitch. So far we've learned single crochet and half double crochet. So we're gonna do double crochet today. So the very first step is to do a slip knot, get that on your hook, however you choose to do that. And then I'm just going to do a little swatch again. I'm just going to chain 12 like I did last time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you're going to want to add 3 extra chains to that. This will be our turning chain. So 13, 14, 15. All right, so the very first step in double crochet is to yarn over, just like in half double crochet, same principle. But this time we're going to go into the 4th chain from the hook. Those extra 3 chains that you made are going to be a turning chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So remember, yarn over first, then insert your hook into that 4th chain from the hook. Remember the chain on the or the loop on the hook doesn't count as anything. Don't ever count that as anything. All right, so yarn over, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then yarn over again and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook, just like when you're half double crocheting, except this time, rather than yarning over and pulling through all 3, you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 of the loops, and then yarn over one more time and pull through those final 2 loops on the hook. And that is a double crochet. Not hard. You're just adding an extra step in there. Okay, so let's do it again. Remember, if you set your work down and you come back and you're not sure what chain you just worked in and which chain you're going into, if you just wiggle that, you can see some movement right here. So you know that's the chain that you just worked into. And so this will be the chain that you're working into right now. All right, so yarn over, insert your hook into that chain, yarn over again, pull up a loop. You'll have 3 on your hook, yarn over again, pull through 2 of those loops, yarn over again, pull through the final 2 loops, yarn over, insert your hook into that next chain, yarn over again, pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over again, pull through 2 of those loops, yarn over again, pull through 2. Okay, not too hard, right? Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And remember, at the very beginning of any project, it's very fiddly just because you don't really have anything at this point to hang on to. So don't get discouraged by that. All right, yarn over and insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, pull through 2, yarn over again, pull through 2. And just do that all the way down the chain. Okay, we've got 2 more. And there's our first row. Notice the double crochet doesn't tend to curl over on itself as much as single crochet does, just because you've got more height there. All right, so remember, In order to start our second row, we have to get height first, because if we don't do that, then your work is going to do this number and start working in on itself. And you don't want that. We want a square or a rectangle or whatever. We don't want a triangle or a trapezoid. So with single crochet, you chain 1 to get the needed height. With half double crochet, you chain 2. With double crochet, you chain 3. And remember, we talked on the half double crochet about how some people like to chain 1 rather than 2. Well, sometimes with double crochet, some people like to chain 2 rather than 3. So if you see that on a pattern, don't panic. That's just one of those personal preference things. I actually tend to like chaining 2 rather than 3. Again, it's just personal preference, and I feel like it creates a little tighter side. But generally speaking, the preferred height for a lot of pattern makers, designers, is 3. So we're going to go with that just because that's the norm. All right, so you're going to chain 3 to get your height, then turn your work. Remember, I'm turning toward me. You don't have to turn toward you. If you want to turn your work away from you, that's fine. Just be consistent with whichever way you're choosing to turn your work. All right, and so we're going to go into the top of this first double crochet right here. Okay, remember, you've got V's on the top. With this, you will have a couple of little legs similar to single crochet. Remember, half double crochet, you had a little ridge right there. With this, you don't. So you're going to yarn over first, and then you're going to go right into the top of that first double crochet underneath the V between the legs. Okay, then yarn over again. Pull up a loop. You'll have 3 on your hook. Yarn over again, pull through 2. Yarn over again, pull through 2. Yarn over, insert your hook into the top of that next double crochet underneath that V. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Yarn over again, pull through 2. Yarn over again, pull through 2. And just continue this all the way down. It's a little bit easier now that you've got that first row, because you've got something to hang on to rather than a little tiny chain. Okay, and this is our last double crochet. This is your turning chain, and we're not counting that as a stitch. I'll show you, you can actually do that, but don't get confused. And I would recommend when you're first starting out, and even as a seasoned crocheter, it's still not a bad idea to do this, but to count your stitches to make sure you haven't accidentally added one. Most patterns will tell you somewhere, usually at the end of whatever row, the directions for the row you're doing, how many stitches you should end with. Well, remember, we started out with 12, so we should still have 12. This is the turning chain, so we're not counting that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm okay on mine. All right, so we're gonna chain 3 to get our height. 1, 2, 3. Then turn your work. Be consistent with how you're doing that. Then you're going to yarn over and go into the top of this first double crochet. And I'm just going to work really quickly all the way across, and then I'll show you what it looks like if you count, if whatever pattern you're reading counts that first, or counts the turning chain, I'm sorry, as your first stitch. A lot of people like to do that because it makes for a little flatter edge. If you don't count your turning chain, the edges are a little bit bumpy, I guess, so to speak. I mean, you can kind of see right here, it leaves like little bumps. I don't mind that, because if you're putting a border on something, it hides that anyway. And I think it's just, especially for a beginner, it's easier to keep track of your stitches. And, okay, so this is the last single or last double crochet. This is the turning chain. We're not going into that. We're going into the top of that V. Okay, so can you see what I mean by it being kind of bumpy? If you don't count that turning chain, it leaves that. But again, I don't mind that because any border that you do will cover that up anyway. All right, so let me show you what it looks like if you use the turning chain as the first single crochet, if you count that. All right, so I just chained 3, and I'm going to turn. So similarly to half double crochet, if you're using this as your first stitch, you're not going to go into this first stitch. You're going to go into the second stitch for your first double crochet, because what will happen is as you're working along, this will end up kind of sitting on top of that first stitch. So that's partially why. Okay, so anyway, so go into yarn over and go into the second stitch, and then just go, whoops, go all the way across. And if you do this, or if a pattern calls for this, you might want to put a stitch marker in the top of that turning chain just to remind yourself that that is what that is, and that is counting as your, so that you can see where it is, and so that you remember to count that as your first stitch. Okay, let me unwind a little bit of this. Okay, so chain 3, turn your work. Okay, so remember, we're not going to go into this first stitch if this is counting as your first double crochet. So we'll yarn over and go into the second double crochet, and then just continue on as usual. Okay, this is the last actual double crochet, and then this is the turning chain. I'm going to count just to make sure. So remember, this is counting as your first stitch, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So then your last double crochet will go into the top of this turning chain, and it's tight. You know, we talked about this with half double crochet. It's kind of tight and not really fun to work into. I mean, you could just go right there maybe. I mean, you don't have to be super picky about it. So I'll just do that. So that's what it looks like. If you count your turning chains as your first double crochet, it lies a little bit flatter on the side as opposed to having these little bumps, but sometimes it can be easy to accidentally forget that, or you know, kind of hard to work into that stitch. So it's personal preference. You know, you do what you want. Just make sure whatever your starting chain is, that is what you continue with all throughout your work. So like I started with 12 and then added the 3 extra for a turning chain. So every single row that I do should have 12 stitches. So I just count my V's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And remember, on this row, the turning chain counted. So that would be 12. So I'm okay on my stitch count. Use a stitch marker if you have to, if you're employing, or even if you're not employing this method and you're not counting this as your as your first stitch. It's not a bad idea when you're first starting out to use like a bobby pin or an actual stitch marker or what a safety pin, just to keep track and make sure you're not forgetting stitches. All right, so that's all I know. You would, if you're making a square like this and you want to fasten off and weave in your work, that's always the same no matter what stitch you're using. So I'm not going to show you how to do that. But that's double crochet and not too hard. All right, you guys have a great day, a great week, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.